As the scene opens with glamorous mannequins placed in front of a French triple floor mirror, we see the back of a nude figure, presumably sewing a garment, our first glimpse at the now infamous Buffalo Bill. The 1991 iconic thriller, The Silence of the Lambs, dives into the world of a relatively new field of criminology, the attempt at profiling criminals, especially serial killers. Buffalo Bill, later identified as James Gum, is described as having believed he was born into the wrong gender, and although desired sexual reassignment surgery, was denied by several institutions due to his mental instability. Because of this denial, Gum believed the only way to achieve womanhood is by physically creating a suit from the women he kills, so his appearance can match what he feels on the inside. While explicitly stated in the film that Gum is not a transsexual, and by Clarice, the protagonist, by stating, "There's no correlation in the literature between transsexualism and violence," the portrayal of Gum even having the desire to be of the opposite sex, and his breaking of social norms through makeup application, sewing, piercings, and disgust with his own physical appearance, paired with the extreme violence he conflicts, no doubt cemented transsexuals as dangerous and deranged individuals to the public. An idea that would last for generations, and still hasn't been resolved to this day. Interestingly, the portrayal of Buffalo Bill mirrors another iconic story written 175 years before the release of The Silence of the Lambs. A monstrous being with parts sewn together in attempts to create a new, unnatural creation is the foundation for Mary Shelley's 1816 Frankenstein. While Shelley had no attempts to link Dr. Frankenstein's monster to trans individuals, the connection to a deviant creation has been adopted by the TERF community. Also, side note, I've been using the word transsexual because that's how it was specifically referred to in The Silence of the Lambs, but the word is pretty outdated, so I'll be using trans or transgender individuals moving forward. Trans exclusionary radical feminists, commonly referred to as TERFs, believe sex is biological and cannot be changed. TERFs view women as a female sex class in order to view historical oppression as being rooted on the basis of sex. On just the surface level, this analysis makes sense. Globally, particularly in Western cultures, women have been the subject of discrimination for thousands of years, unable to have representation or represent themselves in any facet of society. Putting the failure of a scientifically accurate view of sex in biology to the side, I'm saving that for a future video, so stay tuned. TERF's hyperfixation of oppression stemming from solely being biologically female ignores the real and diverse ways women experience oppression. These movements often leave out intersectional modes of oppression like race, class, and disability. TERF movements were founded by and made for white middle-class women looking to gain respect from their white male counterparts. It's no surprise then that current iterations of these movements co-opt right-wing mentalities, purposefully leaving out potential allies, such as LGBTQ communities, in pursuit of equality. Regardless of Shelley's intent, Frankenstein established science fiction as a literary genre, and its significance extended beyond just literary, as it became one of the first silent films ever created. Edison Studios brought the novel adaptation to life in 1910, focusing on the mystical and psychological aspects in order to create a thought-provoking film, with a view of a monster never before seen by the American public. Anyone who was able to afford the price of admission now had access to the world of monsters. Another huge effect on American culture around this time was the influx of Irish and Scottish immigrants to the United States just 40 years prior. Britain's Great Agricultural Depression in the 1870s pushed thousands out of Europe to the rapidly industrializing North America. And with them came influential social and religious practices like the Gaelic guising tradition of dressing up in disguises to impersonate or ward off the dead. Sounding familiar? Americans were already celebrating the Christian practice of honoring the dead on All Hallows' Eve, so combined with the new Gaelic practices brought by immigrants, by the early 20th century, the masses had fully adopted the celebration of Halloween and turned it into something recognizable to the modern holiday. It was more than just a hit with the general public. Queer communities immediately adopted Halloween as a chance to express themselves in ways they wouldn't normally be able. It's difficult finding references to queer practice in history, particularly for queer women, as women in general were written out of the narrative. But one of the first public records of gender bending costumes was in 1907, with women deliberately cross dressing despite its illegal status at the time. With sheepish faces, over 60 Pittsburghers who went too far in celebrating Halloween last night appear this morning at the central police stations. Girls who had donned male attire and who had gotten into trouble shamefacedly admitted their masquerading and in most cases were released. While strict morality laws forbade women from dressing as men or men as women, on Halloween, publicly dictated norms seemed to dissipate. Despite arrest, Pittsburghers continued to dress however they wanted. A 1912 press release states, "No girls or women are allowed to appear in masculine attire. Such masqueraders are forbidden to enter saloons." And a year later, in 1913, several women and men were once again arrested for dressing as opposing genders. The police were kept busy all through the night, keeping order and warning thoughtless roisterers against certain orders. In a few instances, women in men's clothes were seen entering and leaving saloons, and others were seen making demonstrations which had been forbidden. In the afternoon, a Secret Service operative arrested 3 boys who were making early appearances in feminine costumes. But in 1914, something surprising happened. Pittsburgh's police department publicly declared that they would not arrest women caught dressed in men's clothing during the Halloween festivities. It was the first time in Pittsburgh that women could dress in men's attire without being accosted by the police. This example of a queer community's persistence up against physical violence and the law itself allowed for a night to freely express themselves while still remaining safely in the closet. Over the next 40 years, the most visible queer individuals, female impersonators, effeminate men, and masculine lesbians, were also the neighborhood's most popular artists and entertainers. Specifically on Halloween, racially integrated drag balls, disguised as traditional masquerade balls, were a feature for annual celebrations in Chicago. All types attended the balls, and a majority went in full drag. The picture is repeated over and over. Colorful evening gowns, satin slippers, French heels, silken hose gracefully displayed, tiaras, feathered fans, flashing jewelry, all glided about the hall. Gliding is the only name for it. No women could be more graceful. Trains are carefully held by curled and manicured fingers. The girls, men, homosexuals in female costume, move about, swaying their shoulders, rolling their hips, and the only clue to their masculinity is their heavier skeletal frames, or occasionally a more masculine featured face. During the 1930s, African American business owners sponsored the balls due to their great popularity. Though they were not specifically gay events, homosexuals were numerous in the audience, as well as on stage. These balls were also attended by lesbian girls with their lovers, dressed in sack suits well tailored, with ties and shirts well matched. These beautiful celebrations carried on a legacy of self-expression, individualism, and a defiance against a growing anti-LGBT narrative in society. While queer communities were finding joy in celebration, back in the film scene, the 1930s saw the rise of a new form of oppression. The Hays Code created a set of guidelines with strict prohibition of any depiction of sexual perversion in films. And though not explicitly mentioned, this included homosexuality. Filmmakers were now forced to find subtle ways of including LGBTQ characters in their projects without openly acknowledging their sexuality. And unfortunately, they did so without any respect to queer communities. Instead, this practice, known as queer coding, portrayed LGBT characters through negative stereotypes and exaggerated mannerisms, often only including them as villainous characters. Joel Cairo, a character in the 1941 The Maltese Falcon, is a shady figure described as effeminate in his movements. His behaviors are used to imply that he is gay or bisexual without explicitly stating it in the film. Though the novel the film is adapted from does in fact refer to Cairo as queer, the film could only hint at being something other than heterosexual. We even see modern examples of queer coding through villainous characters like Jafar, Loki, Tamatoa, or most iconically, Ursula, explicitly based on the drag queen Divine, with their flamboyant personalities, vocal strains, and gender-bending physicalities. But with greater visibility, predominantly negative visibility through the Hays Code, growing effects of McCarthyism, and purposeful portrayals of non-heterosexuals as villains, came the public opinion of queer activity not being something that should be celebrated. The tradition of drag balls that had persisted through the 1960s were officially being targeted for attack. These celebrations weren't shut down because they violated cross-dressing laws, but rather due to business regulations pertaining to drag contests that were being held by bars. Queer legal discrimination often relies on laws and ordinances that are not directly relevant but available for use, a scheme used repeatedly by lawmakers to specifically target queer communities. But as queer individuals have existed for as long as heterosexuals, so did they persist in the face of these crackdowns. Major cities began promoting queer Halloween parades as bigger and better than ever before throughout the 1970s. And as the AIDS crisis was reaching a fever pitch in the 80s, celebrations expanded beyond personal expression and into a new form of energy towards political activism, even leading to the official legalization of cross-dressing nationwide, allowing for public drag to rapidly take scene. With modern Halloween being a massive spectacle of celebration and creativity, we even see straight individuals starting to cross the line into gender-bending costumes, something that would have gotten them arrested a century ago. While what was once seen as radical has slowly become more accepted, we still see repeated attempts at diminishing self-expression. Modern anti-drag laws mirror the same smokescreen scheme used in the 60s, as although they appear to be attacking the attempt to cross-dress, they are really an attack on trans communities at large. Since we're currently in those legal battles, it's hard to tell what effect we'll see as a result, but one thing is abundantly clear. Despite constant attempts at oppression, queer communities will never go away. It's amazing we get to look back at the last 200 years for inspiration and motivation to fight back against oppression and have countless individuals to thank for their initial resistance, building Halloween and daily life into something worth celebrating. As for our portrayal as villainous characters, we've conquered that as well. Halloween is a time for us to fully adopt our place as the villains of society that we are, the deviants, freaks, and weirdos the world may always view us as. I'll leave you off with a quote from Susan Stryker in My Words to Victor Frankenstein, Above the Village of Chamonix, a thought piece written in response to TERFs comparing trans individuals to the monster in Frankenstein. Like the monster, I am too perceived as less than fully human due to the means of my embodiment. Like the monsters as well, my exclusion from human community fuels a deep and abiding rage in me that I, like the monster, direct against the conditions in which I must struggle to exist. So this Halloween and everyone after, give a big fuck you to those fighting against you and your rights. Be safe and have fun. I'll see you in the next one.